come back to you. Not everything. Please. And by the way, I was at fault on this front too, hanging around a lot of libertarians, and when I was at Fox News, and it's always in Brookings Institute, Reason Magazine, and all Manhattan Institute, they all kind of bleed together at a certain point. Not everything is just something that we discuss in the theoretical. When we talk about the Constitution, the context does matter. This was a people who had warred with the greatest superpower, arguably, the world had seen, certainly in recent centuries, to become the only superpower of the next century. And the Constitution was meant to preserve that. So if you think for a second that these founding fathers would have thought or supported the idea of local judges, of district judges, who were not elected by the people of this country, determining national policy on everything from immigration, not just visas, but deportation, tariffs, dealing with the drug crisis, the fentanyl crisis at the border. You think that Thomas Jefferson would have said, "Oh, sure, some judge in Connecticut should determine what happens at our borders in a time of crisis"? Then you need a CAT scan. And I tell you what, if we find ourselves in an actual war where it comes to your home front, God forbid that ever happens, if we find ourselves there, none of these kinds of games that we're playing now will enter into the equation. You've been separated from the necessity of our founding and Constitution by comfort for far too long. So I want to put that in context before we get into the ins and outs. We're at a point here where this country, it may be irreparably damaged. You understand that? Through decades of complete inaction. And in this case with judges, willful destruction. In other words, this did not happen overnight, the fentanyl crisis, the open borders. You don't get 20 million people in 4 years here illegally overnight. You don't know the number, which also doesn't happen overnight. Hundreds of thousands, millions of illegal aliens benefiting from social services here, from social safety nets, whether it's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. That doesn't happen overnight. And we can't continue down the path of inaction. And part of the reason for the executive branch is to be able to deal with these problems and break through it, especially in times of emergency. So do we want to wait for it to be an emergency where it can no longer be fixed, it's beyond repair? Or, and comment below, do you think that we are at a point in this country where the emergency is now, as far as immigration, as far as the subversion of Western civilization, as far as deals being made, not in the interest of the American people, even though our representatives have made them, but in the interest not of just foreign nations, but foreign adversaries who want to do you harm? Is the emergency now, or do we need to wait for it to become a war? In which case, I guess you have to call Code Pink. So Wednesday, 3-judge panel at the Court of International Trade.
Thanks, Smitty.
Who haven't seen this yet today. They blocked President Trump's tariffs. Again, the president, the will of the people. These judges said, no.
We're following some very big breaking news tonight. News that will come as a big blow to Donald Trump and his agenda. Tonight, a 3-judge panel in New York has effectively blocked almost all of Trump's disastrous tariffs. Trump's tariffs against Mexico and Canada, his tariffs against the EU, against China, his tariffs against uninhabited islands with nothing but penguins and snow. They are all blocked by this federal court decision.
The court said his effort to justify them with broad claims of national emergencies exceeded his legal authority. Can you believe it? The ruling caused stock futures to jump. I'm going to say this to you twice. The Trump policy that was put in place got struck down by the courts. And what did the markets do? Jumped. They were excited about it.
The world will reset itself around the restoration of law and order in international trade and the crushing of the Trump tariffs and resultant personal worldwide humiliation of Donald Trump.
So let me be really clear before we get to some key facts. You just heard it. Legacy media does the bidding of Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street was a load of crap then, and it is now. They're happy that Wall Street will willingly and gleefully put the needs of the American people and our manufacturing base and our employment base on the back burner in favor of short-term profits. They think that's a good thing because you can look at inflation right now. You can look at employment numbers. You can look at, by the way, what happened in Donald Trump's first term. The highest raise that working-class Americans saw in their salary in modern American history. They would rather see Wall Street do a little bit better. And by the way, it was already on the way up. And then you just heard O'Donnell, who wants you to stop the hammering. You heard him say, isn't this great, gleefully, that the rest of the world is mocking your elected leader, your president? There are no exceptions. They always celebrate the wins of people who want to destroy this country, like China.
Yeah.
To be clear.
Well, he even goes, he said something there that made me, it blew my mind. He said, order is kind of returning or something along those lines, like the order of global trade. I'm like, you mean the order that's screwing us as a nation? You're happy that we're returning to that normal order that Donald Trump was trying to correct? Right. That's not just being against Trump. That's being against us. Like you don't want us to succeed.
By the way, a big part of the tariffs, too, was about China getting their ass in line with fentanyl.
Yes.
So I guess the order of record overdose deaths. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, O'Donnell. So let's go to the first key fact here. All references available from description. Number one, the ruling, what their argument is. And Half Asian Bill, you can probably clarify this with people. It's that President Trump can't invoke emergency powers under the Emergency Powers Act to deal with things they claim like trade deficits or China's fentanyl issue, right? That's their standing?
Yeah, essentially what they're saying is that it's, even though it's specifically tailored to a particular concern that is backed by a lot of evidence. This isn't just anecdotes or talking about, hey, look, a few folks overdosed. The millions of issues that are coming out of this, people with overdose, the drugs, the border issues, they're saying those are not specific enough to be able to invoke the National Emergency Act and then use that as a basis under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to do these tariffs. I mean, it's one of the most ridiculous analyses, keeping in mind that the last time that the Court of International Trade even spoke on a presidential tariff was under H.W. Bush in the steel industry in 2002, and they didn't even make a rule. So this isn't just, Trump is doing something that's a little bit unusual. Well, unusual circumstances require unusual solutions, but the courts even taking up of this issue is extremely unusual.
Yeah, and that would again seem like the weaponizing in many ways of the justice system. To give you an idea, this affects the Liberation Day tariffs, right? They're like 10 to 50%, depends on the country. Apparently, they may be, I don't fully know this, the government may have to refund businesses that have already had to pay tariffs that have been collected. Now, there's some that are not affected. For example, the tariffs on cars, on steel, on aluminum, because that was imposed under a different law, the Trade Expansion Act of 1962. So some people are a little confused about that. That's why. So one is okay and one's not. And this brings us to key fact number two, who the judges actually are. So you have Gary S. Katzman, was appointed under Obama. You have Timothy M. Rife was appointed under Trump. I know people say, look at Trump now. Well, so was Amy Coney Barrett. And then you have Louis Anderson's long-lost twin sister, Jane A. Rustani. So, I'm a judge, you guys.
And that family spot. She's not even the weirdest looking district judge, though.
No?
No, I made a list.
All right, we'll go back to the legal analysis, but I guess you have a list.
I have a list real quick of the weirdest looking district judges that I've seen.
Okay.
Or at least last night.
Okay.
All right. Number 5 on my list is district judge and girl from the ring, all grown up, Linda Lopez.
Okay, that one's pretty weird.
Yeah. Brush her hair, lady. Number 4, Ninth Circuit judge who requests that both counsels approach the bench so she can inform them that she is in fact the one who farted. Anna de Alba.
It was me.
Yeah, we know, Your Honor.
They're missing. Right. Okay.
Your flatulence.
All right. What's the next one?
Circuit Appeals Judge and Human Suppository, John B. Owens.
That's exactly what it was in my head.
Yeah. No eyebrows for nice insertion. Yes. Smooth transition. Number 2. Fourth Circuit Court Judge, sorry, it's hard to read. Fourth Circuit Court Judge, who is totally not buying my story, Roger Gregory.
He's like, that's some bullshit.
That's some bullshit. I know I am you. Okay.
I don't have time for this.
It's lunch.
times.
The chorus. And number one, weirdest looking district judge, Court of Appeals judge, who reads every case up, down, left, and right all at the same time, and is also a part-time sloth. Oh, that makes Eunice Lee.
She is positively turpid.
All right, nothing gets by her.
That's been Josh's list. I appreciate it.
Okay, that is the most white-named black person I've ever seen in my life. Eunice?
Yeah.
They probably pronounce it Eunice.
Eunice. Don't call Eunice. I got a cousin.
Literally, when the picture came up, I was like, oh, yeah, this is not what I expected. Not an Asian sloth. No.
Her son is you nephew.
No, but Asian sloth is my favorite strain of wheat.
That's what it turns you into.
All right, key fact number 3, and this is really important. Half Asian Bill Richmond will know this probably better than anyone here. What can the Trump administration do? Now, I know they've already filed an appeal.
And that's what they got to do. So the very first thing is the ruling from the Court of International Trade will take effect in 10 days, is when the officials have to go and walk back everything that they need to do under that particular order. And so the appeal to the Federal Circuit Court, so that's the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, has already been filed, and the Federal Circuit can issue a stay. They can say, nope, Court of International Trade, your ruling incorrect, do not have to move forward with it. If the Federal Circuit decides to say international trade was correct, keep going, then there can be an appeal up to the United States Supreme Court. So I would say we're going to see a busy next 14 days on this front.
And here, just so you know, there are other options, other tariff options that can be basically implemented via executive order under section, I have this here, 232. And as I understand it, this allows the president to levy tariffs on products that threaten national security. So, for example, that would be like the current steel and aluminum tariffs, Bill?
Yes. So the specific ones, this is that issue of like how narrow can it be? So this isn't an argument to say that the president can't give tariffs or initiate tariffs on specific products or specific industries. But what they're saying is you can't just do it broadly, because they're saying that fentanyl is not a broad enough problem, that illegal border crossings by our foreign enemies is not a big enough problem, which really just comes down to, are you guys not fucking paying attention?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what's the number of deaths?
They are pretty useful during rush hour, though, when everybody's heading back to all those little subdivisions there. People don't understand stop signs.
Well, my neighbor has sign.
And people don't understand roundabouts either, but as they call them around here, traffic circles.
I also know that some can be implemented through Section 301. This allows, as I understand, the president to levy tariffs on specific countries that impose unfair trade barriers, which sounds exactly like what he did. That's why I'm so confused.
So they're called the reciprocal trade tariffs. I mean, they're literally like, if you're doing it to us, we're going to do it to you. And now apparently we're saying, well, you can't just unilaterally or globally respond to everyone.
What? Yeah. So let me make sure I understand. Section 301, it allows the president to levy tariffs on specific countries that impose unfair trade barriers. But reciprocal tariffs, according to this court, don't apply.
So what they're saying is like, okay, so you remember the quote earlier, she was like, the lady on the news clip was like, oh, this snowy island that all they do is export like sea salt or something, right?
Yeah.
So there is a point to be made that some of these countries may have tariffs that are not actually impacting us in some kind of serious way because they're such small players.
Right.
But the reality is the vast majority of these, the reciprocal tariffs, are designed to say, you've got some issue with us, we're going to go ahead and step up and start dealing with it across the board. But they're saying, no, you can't just decide to do it across the board. It doesn't make sense.
Well, we also have another possibility with Section 122, and this allows the president to levy a maximum 15% tariff to address the balance of payments crisis. So that only can last 150 days unless Congress extends it, right?
Correct. And so that's what Gerald was actually mentioning that earlier before the show. You know, there's a way to be able to start moving these into place and give those options. In fact, in this particular circumstance, folks even were wondering before the challenge came out that the IEEPA national emergency tariffs that were struck down or kind of have to be walked back, why they weren't related to some of these other sections. So, for example, under the Trade Expansion Act, you can literally have a national emergency declaration. There's some findings that have to be made by Congress.
Damn it.
And then it becomes almost unattackable.
Always picked the wrong one.
You can't use the courts to attack it.
Should not have got behind the minivan.
And I think the issue is that Trump was moving forward based on what appeared to be everyone agreeing that this was a big issue. Right. And now everyone's coming back and going, oh, I guess fentanyl's just not that big.
Right. Yeah, that was the issue that everyone united on. And I was wondering if you could just we need to separate fentanyl and opiates. Because unfortunately, the baby that was the back.
Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Mobile order UT57 for Norm.
Norm?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead and pull around the first window, Norm.
Some Vicodin because he had a root canal and then was blowing hobos that he could get a back. It's just not true. It's just not true. And now people who need pain medication can't get it.
You can't even get a poppy seed bagel anymore.
No, you cannot.
It's ridiculous.
You can't. Not if
you can't even blow a hobo.
That's true.
We all have our lines.
That's true. Well, that's just what he told you.
You get a little extra smear.
He doesn't actually have poppy seed bagels. There's also a way to do it through Section 338. And again, as I understand it, with the links here, I think with a link to Cornell, it allows the president to impose up to 50% tariffs on countries that specifically discriminate against the United States. But that's never been used before. And again, here's the thing. They say, oh, Donald Trump applied it too broadly. These sections and sort of areas where it would be permissible also seem insanely broad to me, Bill.
Yeah. There's a lot of them that are brought in because they haven't actually been used. We're just going to have more and more challenges that go, well, this has never been limited before, so let's just go ahead and try to limit it. And then when you go back to the judges who say, well, we're going to err on the side of doing anything that will limit Trump's agenda because we don't like Trump, and it becomes a problem, right? Yeah. The pressure there on these judges and them succumbing to it is a big problem. I mean, these are Article 3 courts. They need to maintain their independence.
They still get out before the other guys, so.
Continue to err on the side of striking down without taking it.
Thank you. You too.
You're pretty much shut down everything. At the time, you're trying to shut down everything. Literally everything President Trump has done.
They were striking down his lunch order.
Yes. they have what, tariffs? Okay. Then they've done visas. Okay. They've done the deportation orders in some cases. So what can be done?
Trying some of these crispy strips on my drive all the way out to Green Springs.
Didn't you have George W. Bush effectively declare war without Congress at one point in time? Remember, that was kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And now you can't say, hey, a reciprocal tariff until you fix the fentanyl epidemic. Tell me the courts have been politicized without telling me the courts have been politicized.
Right. One of my problems too, and Bill, you and I were talking about this earlier, is that the people that brought these cases, they know what I'm about to say about what Goldman said about this. Goldman issued a statement after this ruling and said basically this is a nothing burger, in that the tariffs can be put on in other ways, and the administration will move to do that. So the tariffs won't really go anywhere. It's not a nothing burger in that the courts are now overstepping their bounds yet again, and that's what we're really talking about. But that just goes to show you the people that are bringing these suits, they know that is likely what's going to happen. And so it's not really even about affecting the tariff policy of this administration. It's about making Donald Trump look bad and weak. Right. And who does that help? China. Exactly. Our foreign adversaries. China's all too happy that this is happening right now, by the way. Right. They love it. They want this to happen. So, Bill, what you just said something a minute ago that I just basically I wrote down a little bit of a note. Part of it is a cuss word, and I can't
guitar,
say that, but I read it.
Sweet.
The courts can say this and issue a stay. Screw it. I don't care. It's going to go to the Supreme Court. I'll wait on their decision. Until then, everything stays exactly as it is. Come get me, bro.
Well, they've got 10 days. At the very least, they've got 10 days.
No, it's not even 10 days. I'm saying I don't care what happens in 10 days. Screw whatever order they come out with. Screw whatever. I'm doing literally nothing. If I'm your administration, I'm doing nothing right now. Nothing changes. I'd go out and be like, hey, that's really interesting. It's really cute that you guys had this decision. It doesn't make any sense. So we're going to appeal it. We're gonna ask for a stay. We're gonna go all the way to the Supreme Court. And until that decision comes down, I'm not doing anything different than what I'm doing now. China, you're still screwed.
You mean kind of like Joe Biden did with rent forgiveness, like student loan forgiveness?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What are the consequences if he does that? I mean, I know it's different for Trump and Biden.
Yeah, so this is always the issue when you look at the judicial system and you say, okay, what will these courts do? They don't really have their own police force. At that point, you start getting into this fraying of the entire system, right? So a question of like, if the branches no longer listen to the other branches in areas where they're making rulings, who's going to step in and do something about it? It could be something like declaring that these officials who are not complying are no longer in power. They no longer have the authority. But again, it requires like the whole department to decide we're not going to listen to this official who a court has now removed for having not done it. Or you start moving over into
the judicial side of enforcement, where the Justice Department starts arresting officials for failing to comply with court orders, you start throwing them in jail, things like that. So, I mean, this could escalate pretty crazy.
So, hold on.
Seems unlikely, though.
Yeah, they're not going to do that because this is the only president who they have tried to jail and someone attempted to assassinate, and that backfired.
It'll make
I can't imagine they want to send in.
Yeah. Send in your guys. By the way, let me just clarify. I'm not saying that you're ignoring the courts. I'm saying that you're waiting for this to go through the process. And so you're going to sidestep the game that these guys are playing. Right. So we'll get to some of the solutions down here. But because there are obvious solutions,
I'm a fan
this
of the
administration can go
common
ways with tariffs. The game is basically, let's just slow him down long enough to where he's ineffective as president of the United States. And so he looks weak and helps our enemies and people around the world that are competing with us, maybe aren't our enemies, want to compete with us economically. I just think he says, fine, yeah. I'm just going to ignore all this until it gets to the Supreme Court. And then we'll see. We'll have a fight there.
Macro point here.
You do send me the fucking link.
Almost exclusively Republicans and conservatives who wear the American flag pin. You guys get it?
Yeah.
They're celebrating empowering China, just like they did MS-13. Do you guys get it? I get it. And Avish Doll is a very accomplished lawyer. He's going to understand the details.
BornOn indoctrinated.
Far better. But I think you all know enough to see that they are cheerleading for people who want to take what you've built. And I don't just mean you, the American people as a country, what you have built personally. If it's a business, if it's some sense of community, hey, maybe it's a rehab center, by the way, to deal with people who've been struggling with this drug crisis. Everything that they are advocating for and they are cheering is adversarial to the good of the American people. And I think it's important to keep that in focus, because then you'll understand the behavioral pattern. Wait, why is the media, why is the Democrat Party, and why are all of these district court, these judges, why are they all acting the same, following lockstep? There has to be a commonality. Oh, other commonality. Oh, championing China. And it's not a stretch, by the way, that foreign Chinese nationals can stay on our campuses. Oh, making sure, by the way, that we don't necessarily have voter ID. And the reason that all ties back, because you had a Chinese national who voted in Michigan. It was confirmed his vote still counted anyway. You guys are shit. Oh, wait a second. Oh, advocating on behalf of a nation who has, by their own admission, been seeking the destruction of Western civilization and harming you in this country any which way they can. And they all follow lockstep. When they say, hey, look, Donald Trump's in the White House, sure. Look at all of these other institutions. Higher learning, you've seen what's happening at Harvard and Brown. You look at the courts, you've seen them overstep their bounds. You look at what's happening, of course, in the legacy media. Look at just Jake Tapper, what he's going through right now, still not apologizing for lying. How do they all line up on one side all the time? Oh, and who else is there? Oh, that's right. China and criminal gangs who want to exploit our open borders policy. They're all in one trouble. Them versus you. Let's go to the next key fact here. And this is important. What can be done? Well, really, this should go to Congress. And you would think, hey, Republicans have quite a bit of control at this point in time. They could retroactively ratify President Trump's tariffs or pass a tariff law. But you have some people there who may not. So this, and I have this written down here to make sure that I remember correctly, they can amend the Emergency Economic Powers Act or expand Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act to include issues specifically like trade deficits or the Chinese fentanyl crisis. And here's the thing. I know they can do that. Congress would need to do it, but it already seems like it's in these sections.
Hell yeah.
It seems disheartening. Like, yeah, but that kind of seems there, though.
That's the biggest rebuttal to this entire thing. Is
That's how you do it. What kind you get?
Tariffs in large areas to the executive branch, specifically to the president. So really, again, we're not arguing about can the president impose tariffs or not. It's how many tariffs and how far can those go, which makes the complete striking down of the specific tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs, the ones related to fentanyl and border, a huge problem, because it's essentially saying we know you're allowed to do some stuff, but we're just going to throw it all out right now and then let you figure it out, right? So that political motivation to say we're just going to hamper you across the board is a big problem. And to get to your point earlier, Stephen, I think it's really interesting when you think about the lack of values that are applied when attacking these policies, because the side, like you said, of Occupy Wall Street is now using the evidence of the stock market going up and capitalists winning as evidence that this was a good policy or a good result. It's like, wait a minute, whose side? You're not even on your own side anymore. And that's where you can find some hypocrisy that underlies this entire attack on what it should be and is a stance to protect America.
If Donald Trump existed in the 1800s,
As much as I drive, I gotta watch myself.
Protect the American worker and our manufacturing sector, Bernie Sanders would praise him as a folk hero. You guys understand that? What do you think Bernie? Just take away the name. This man, he stood up to Wall Street. He said, "I don't care about Wall Street. The fat cat profits. I'm going to focus on employment, and I'm going to focus on economic growth, and inflation, manufacturing for the working class." But now he's on the side of Wall Street. It's horseshit. Anyone who tells you that Occupy Wall Street was it was always horseshit. These people are never consistent in their values, ever. Let's go on to what their claims are. Let's steel man this here for a second, as far as how they justify it. Here's one of their claims, is that the trade deficit doesn't actually constitute unusual or any kind of extraordinary threat.
The law does not grant tariff authority to the president simply when he finds or determines that an unusual and extraordinary threat exists. I sense a little snark there. I appreciate it. But man, when you put it that way, it all kind of makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Now, for the first time, we have a federal court saying that we all kind of sort of knew to be true already. The president's justification for this trade war is BS.
Okay, so here's the truth. The threat is not extraordinary. It's not an emergency for people like Jim said. Okay? It is for a lot of people in this country, where yet judges sit by while this country just got caved in many ways, particularly our industries. This nation right now, you don't think this is an emergency? We are completely dependent. Remember COVID? On supply chains from our biggest adversaries who want to do us harm. Things like critical minerals, pharmaceuticals. Remember shortages during COVID of that? Electronics, chipsets. And then, if we want to right this ship, we can't, by the way, just up production because of some other red tape. We also can't build our own stuff here anymore. So,
in the middle of the road on the other side.
Any kind of fabricated metal, all kinds of military goods. Think about this for a second. If you
I just got some fresh pepper balls for my burner too.
The United States' ability to extract, to use, to refine, process, to basically create what we need as far as rare earth minerals, as far as chipsets, as far as our ability to build ships, as far as our ability to build and assemble a lot of military goods. So in a world where an asteroid just hits those targets, well, we can't do it anymore. Do you realize it would have no discernible difference because we can't do it now? It all has to come from China. It all has to come from overseas. We're not talking about tchotchkes that you put in a party finger bag. We're talking about during COVID. You guys remember this during COVID? Now, this was as bad as it gets for you, and it turned a lot of you conservative. During COVID, it was cheaper to get a new car than a used car in many ways. Do you remember that? Because of the interest rates? Do you remember how there was a shortage? Do you remember how you weren't? It's the first time where I may invoke the lemon law, and half Asian Bill knows this because I've had to have the transmit. The only time in my life I purchased a new car because it was the only full-size SUV available in the region. And you have twins and a 120-pound dog? You need one. The transmission has been switched out like 3-4 times because they didn't have the chipsets. You all went through that. Do you guys remember needing certain drugs, antibiotics during COVID, not being able to get it? That's the closest you've had to an emergency. Do you know how much worse it would get in a time of war? Where it's not just because they have supply issues overseas as well, it's that they deliberately turn it off. But don't worry. I bet China would never do that because they're looking out for you. I bet they would never use the limited.
Let me say one quick thing on that, and I think I'm uniquely situated. My Chinese family members who are 100% Chinese, they're not even like me, half Asian, they're 100% Chinese. They have been sounding the alarm for decades, saying that if you don't recognize that China wants to dominate and control the planet, then you are not listening. right? I think that's the fundamental disagreement here. Is they're going, oh, you're just being racist by targeting these other countries and people that look different. No, we're not doing it based on the way they look. We're doing it based on what they say and do. The lack of intellectual property protection, the ability to send shitty goods, if not actual bad drugs, over into this country. The precursors for fentanyl being able to flow not only directly to the United States, but onto the North American continent that makes its way into the United States. China could be doing more. They have one of the most aggressive and complete police states that have ever existed. And they're like, yeah, I don't know. I have no idea how these drugs and the chemicals are getting in. And why do we sound like we're from Jersey? I don't know. It's a bad Asian accent. No, but that's what the Chinese are saying who are here in America. They're like, hey, we know a little thing about those guys because we fled their fucking country.
Yes.
And the rest of white liberal America is looking around going, no, I think you're just being racist.
Well, put it this
Yeah, I
way.
saw that pop up.
We all-
I didn't go into it. I was going to the bathroom or taking a shower before I was
we
leaving.
were in a tailspin. China was also in a tailspin, largely because of the line. But let's just say this. We were all in a tailspin, okay? And
He started pretty early this morning for him.
You saw it. Now, change it. Change. We're in a tailspin. China's not, because they planned it. So take what you went through with toilet paper and apply it to everything you use. It's not an emergency.
No.
Let's go on to the next plan. And this is one that they kind of make, but they say, well, fentanyl is kind of an emergency, but it doesn't really matter. I have this from the ruling. They say the state plaintiffs do not argue that the fentanyl trafficking orders fail to invoke unusual and extraordinary threats. That's what I'm saying. Like, we're not arguing that it's not an emergency. But then they go on to say a dam deals with flooding by holding back a river, but there is no such association between the act of imposing a tariff and the, quote, unusual and extraordinary threats. For example, that the fentanyl trafficking orders purport to combat. What they're basically saying is, yeah, we get that the tariffs are leverage, and we get that fentanyl is actually, we acknowledge, kind of an emergency, but we're going to act like we don't understand the connection. So no.
So what is
Not
there?
specific enough is basically the argument. Like, I agree, though. I think that what the court is saying here is we need to build 100,000 A-10 warthogs and have them patrol the borders.
Yes.
And just shoot every fentanyl-carrying boat that comes near them.
Yes.
I actually agree with that. I'm into A-10 warthogs.
Okay.
They're beautiful. They sound beautiful.
But short of that, yes, it's ridiculous. It's saying, well, we have this one really important lever that China would not like if we used, so we push the button, and now we're like, no, it's not directly connected.
Yeah. Well, here's
I
the
don't
thing.
understand the metaphor. The metaphor is that if you build a dam, you stop the river. But they're just saying, well, just let the river flow.
Yeah.
You don't,
Yeah.
don't even try to build a dam.
Right.
Or whatever.
Right.
Whatever you're doing, just stop. Kill the beaver.
I want to be reductive here because I'm good at that. You have a choice. Pull the economic levers now, or pull the lever of the war machine later. That's your choice. It's a binary choice. There is no choice number 3. Pull the tariff lever now, make it sting enough that they get in line, or pull the war lever in 2, 5, 10 years.
See you busy. Only about another 37 minutes.
Really quickly, do you want to, so we have to rate in just a minute, do you want to do we have the reverse super chat today?
Oh, we do have the reverse.
Let's do that, and then we'll finish this out.
All right. Well, then I guess it is time for, and you guys have heard of Super Chat.
Yeah.
You guys know what Super Chat is? It's where you give us money, but we don't allow you guys to do that. You can join Rumble Premium, and that's about the only way to support it. Go to the merch shop. But what we do is we do the opposite of that, where we give you money.
That's right.
It's time.
beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is. Welcome back. Happy Thursday. The week is motoring on by. If today is Thursday, then one can logically deduce that tomorrow will be a Friday. We're excited about that, but it's not here yet. We got business to attend to. We got today queued up some FBI news, some Tulsi Gabbard news, and this is applicable to most of us here who were labeled domestic violent extremists over the last 4 years. They were targeting us politically for our positions as Americans. We also got this China news and more. I saw this come in from Mike's story in a super chat this morning. Good to see you, Mike. Thanks for sending this in. Asking, I don't see this on the AM agenda. Please talk about the tariff issue in the court that blew up Trump's tariff plan. And we'll get into that. Not this morning, but I've got that queued up for this afternoon. So we're waiting for this story to percolate a little bit more. I did read through the opinion, the tariff decision, and we started to assemble our research file over at the Lodge. So I just dropped that as our newest research file. So we're assembling some background on these folks. Court of International Trade. You see, we got the photos of these folks. That's the court. That's the ruling. And I did a little bit of a breakdown on the judges last evening. We actually got 2 red judges who were on behind this and 1 blue judge. And so the court, I've got my concerns about it, right? And we'll go through it. We'll spend a lot of time today on the show on it. I want to let the White House marinate on this a little bit. We've got the White House, I'm sure, will be responding to this today. As you can see, we've got Caroline Leavitt, who will be out 1 p.m. pretty soon, talking, I'm sure, about this, and they're, I think, developing their strategy in response to the tariffs. They've already filed their notice of appeal on this, and so we'll come back on that in the show. So, Mike, thanks for asking about it. We'll just put a pin in that. We'll be back in 6 hours to hit it. We got, so Caroline Leavitt will be out. President participating in a swearing-in ceremony for the Chief of Protocol of the United States. And so, otherwise, pretty light day, other than this tariff situation, which is a big one, because obviously that is something that Trump has made the crux of his foreign policy in many ways. Over on C-SPAN, Secretary of Air Force talking to the Air Force Academy, which is not going to include Ava, the Air Force cadet who's killed by illegals, as we talked about yesterday. State Department, they're coming out, holding a briefing in about 2 hours. We got Rep. Latifah Simon? Who's this? I didn't know we had a Rep. Latifah. A Rep. Latifah Simon from Oakland. 12th District. All right, she's going to be hosting a town hall tonight. I didn't even know this was happening. All right, everything's canceled. Cancel work. Call in. Pause everything you're doing. Baseball practice? No, not tonight, little Robbie. You have to watch Rep. Latif. All right, so we got that. Latif, and Big Fanny. All right, so that's happening over there. And we'll keep our eye on that, I'm sure. So Trump also made this announcement yesterday. Said there was a major win against the Pulitzer Prize.
I actually got to do some work.
And a defamatory award of their once highly respected prize. By failing...
talking about
all the stories on Russia. The Florida Appellate Court rejected their corrupt attempt to halt the case. They won a Pulitzer for totally incorrect reporting about Russia. It was a total scam. They'll have to get back their award, says Trump. They were awarded for false reporting. We can't let that happen in the United States. We're holding the fake news media responsible for the lies of the American people, so we can together make America great again. Well, that's good. All right, so that case is moving forward. You can also see Elon and his time at Doge is now up. So he has posted this as of yesterday. As my scheduled time as a special government employee comes to an end, I would like to thank President Trump for the opportunity to reduce wasteful spending. The Doge mission will only strengthen over time as it becomes a way of life. And we can only hope that happens. Now, the Republican Congress should be ashamed of themselves for not getting behind this man's mission. It's like you have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to work with one of the most impactful people in history, and the Republicans are too busy squandering over stupid budgetary concerns in the Congress. It just kind of shows you how much heft and momentum the sinking ship has in Washington. Right? You can have somebody come in and say, hey, you do a lot of things here, like a big vision, let's do it. And then it just turns into congressional dragging of the feet because they're getting their fat pork for themselves, their families, and their grift continues. So we got that. Now, some other big drops that have come out, and this was a pretty interesting one that came out from Chuck Grassley. Remember who he is from the great state of Iowa. An FBI cover-up exposed by the one and only Chuck Grassley. He is the senator out of Iowa, and he dropped this one, which is pretty known but also shocking, that exposes the GPS contractor called Nellie Orr. Remember, she worked for Fusion GPS. We got newly declassified documents that are showing the FBI was covering up her lies to Congress. And Chuck Grassley released and declassified this entire report. Take a look at it. But here is what his press release said over on his website. He says, all right, Fusion GPS, if you remember them, this was the whole Steele dossier. This was the 2016 Hillary scam. He tried to call Trump a Russian colluder, and that was all fake. Jake Sullivan posted that. Michael Sussman went, tried to sell it to the FBI. He got charged and acquitted in Washington, D.C. And the entire scandal was covered up by the FBI. No one investigated it at all. Now, here's what Grassley says. The FBI and DOJ failed to prosecute Nellie Orr. She was the Fusion GPS contractor for lying to Congress about her role. And what the FBI and the DOJ did in the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, saying the 2019 FBI analysis that now Chuck Grassley got his hands on provides detailed evidence that Orr lied to Congress during the sworn testimony and obstructed ongoing congressional investigations, violating multiple federal statutes. The document also exposes how the FBI prevented agents from reviewing all the relevant information necessary to perform the full analysis, hiding the documents in other files so that nobody knows where they are. They couldn't get to the bottom of her testimony or the fake Russian collusion investigation. Here's the background. Now, Nellie Orr was employed by Fusion GPS from 2015 to 16 when they were trying to take out Trump. They were doing open source research attempting to connect Trump with Russian organized crime. Remember that nonsense? This research was paid for by Hillary and the DNC. Both organizations ultimately settled with the FEC after allegations of campaign finance violations, but they didn't have Letish in New York prosecute Hillary for that, for fraudulent business crimes, which is what she was investigating Trump for intentionally misreporting the true purposes of the payments. At the time of Nellie Orr's employment, her husband, Bruce, was an associate deputy attorney general at the DOJ, okay? So husband works for the government, is able to prosecute and investigate a bunch of allegations because he's a prosecutor. She is opposition research for the Hillary Clinton DNC team, and they're working together as husband and wife. Both Nellie and Bruce testified to the House committee as part of the oversight, and we now know it was a disproven allegation of collusion. In 2019, we also had Mark Meadows, shout out, a member of the Oversight Committee, filed a criminal referral with the DOJ. That would have been to Biden's, that would have been Trump's people. So nothing happened with that. So I'm kind of wondering where that would have gone. So 2019, it went, where'd it go? Key findings of this, Nellie Orr. So that would have gone, I guess, to Bill Barr. Right? Bill Barr would have gotten this criminal referral from Mark Meadows about 2019. Nellie Orr may have been involved in drafting aspects of the Steele dossier, conspired with her husband Bruce, who was working at the DOJ at the time, to ensure that high-level FBI officials actually got her work product. While Fusion GPS was coordinating media entities to legitimize the FBI's case. Remember, they were playing both sides. Sussman went to the FBI and he sat down with those corrupt FBI people and said, hey, the Washington Post or some media entity is going to talk about Trump's collusion. You should investigate this before they publish it because then your sources and methods and all the things that goes on. And then they went to the Washington Post and said, guess what? We just met with the FBI. They're going to go tell this story. They're investigating.
Coming over or not, dude?
You guys should report about this. Both sides. Both were lies. Nellie Orr may have falsely testified to Congress that she had no knowledge of the DOJ's Trump investigation. Yes, she did. She gave a thumb drive containing her work to her husband, Bruce. Hey, husband, this is the Hillary Clinton opposition research that we're making up. Can you do something with this at the DOJ to stop Trump? They're criminals, which he then provided to the FBI as part of its ongoing investigation, right? Nellie Orr, which is Hillary planting evidence, the Democrats planting evidence corruptly in the FBI. Nellie Orr's email traffic also shows she emailed her Russia investigative research directly to Bruce Orr, her husband, in the DOJ. Nellie's research closely mirrored the DOJ and the Trump investigation. Bruce only shared information with the FBI after he got it from his wife, which was coming from the Democrats. Nellie and Bruce met personally with British intelligence officer and Fusion GPS contractor called Christopher Steele. Okay, so then they fed it to him, and then he whitewashed it. He says, oh, this comes from the Christopher Steele research. It doesn't come from Nellie Orr, Bruce's wife. Nellie and Bruce met personally with him in 2016. Then Fusion GPS pitched Nellie Orr's research to the Department of State. Okay, so then they put their name on it, so it didn't come from a bad source, for an additional investigation. It's a setup. Nellie Orr deleted emails with Russia-focused DOJ prosecutors, meaning she was concealing her exchanges with DOJ officials involved in the Trump investigation. And she may have falsely testified to Congress, saying, I was not involved in drafting the Steele dossier. Yes, you did. You made an analytical error in her own research that is identical to the one in the Steele dossier. You guys both made the same dumb mistake in your made-up reports? That's weird. Or not. The Steele just took hers, copy and pasted it. A report deleted from a thumb drive that was owned by Fusion co-founder Glenn Simpson and that was provided to the FBI via Bruce Orr contained the same subject matter as they were working together. Now, in direct contradiction to her congressional testimony, Nellie Orr disseminated Fusion GPS research to DOJ prosecutors beyond those that she told us. She repeatedly sent this to a bunch of other people. Lisa Holton, Ivana Nizich, Joseph Wheatley all got it. Now, in direct contradiction to her congressional testimony, aka lying, Nellie said that she took 6 ham radio classes. Hey, that's one of those hobbies I was interested in for 5 minutes before I didn't do anything with it. I put it on my treadmill with my jiu-jitsu. An exam during her time as a Fusion GPS employee. Ham radios can facilitate international communication without the use of a cell signal. Is she trying to communicate with the British via ham? Nellie claimed her ham radio training occurred before she was employed by Fusion GPS. However, her records from the Fairfax Fire and Rescue Department, her entire ham radio training occurred between March to May. And she did that while working at Fusion GPS. So it's like a little cover story or something. Nellie Orr may have also been involved in the Alpha dossier, which is another sham document that was saying that Trump was using Russian cell phones and IP addresses and all that crap. So that's the summation here from Chuck Grassley. He declassified the full files, 43-pager, and inside you can see what Washington figured out for us back in 2019, well after all of this had occurred. They say, we got some administrative notes, said we opened up this investigation, and here's some background. They say, an initial investigation of the allegations contained in the criminal referral that came from Meadows established the fact that Nellie provided demonstrably false information to 2 aspects of her testimony. Now, whether this might lead to a criminal charge is up for the DOJ's Public Integrity Section, which at the time was Bill Barr. I'm guessing if the timeline is right on this. The section serves to aid in the determination about whether we should prosecute this. On May 3rd, relevant FBI information related to this was inaccessible to FBI investigators. Wow, look, given that their files were under prohibited access status. Okay, meaning somebody in the FBI locked the files up. Investigators at the FBI, hey, we just want to go, where's the file on Nellie Horst? That's in the prohibited section. File. And actually prohibited, which unlike restricted, precludes investigators from detecting the existence of even potentially relevant serial numbers. So it's not like you even know there's a file on Robert Gouveia. Okay, where's the Robert Gouveia file? Yeah, well, do we have one? Yeah, we have one.
Okay.
Okay, so you can see it. And what's inside, it's got all this stuff in there, maybe a table of contents, but no, you can't have it because it's restricted. Now, prohibited means you don't even search for them. You say, hey, let me search for any files on Robert Gouveia. Nothing shows up because they're all prohibited. But you have them, but they're secret. You can't see them because the FBI. In other words, when search terms that exist in the prohibited status cases are searched in Sentinel, the search will get a false negative. Okay, actually, we have no files on that at all. Thanks for searching. Oh, I guess nothing's relevant. Now, there was corruption. On May 30th, the FBI investigation team obtained DOJ concurrence and released to Washington Field Office 13 redacted FD302s interview sheets of Bruce Orr. At the time, Ryder requested unredacted versions of these from the prohibited access special counsel holdings. Then they advised that some, but not all the cases, had been migrated.
A little bit, not bad at all, though.
Status, so like totally gone.
It's productive now, at least.
So that you can identify potentially relevant restricted access serial numbers. At the time, the FBI investigators were not granted access to these restricted access cases, but could, through Sentinel searches, see that the terms were found in non-viewable serials, right? So they're like, wait a minute, this is showing up in this file, but when I search for this name, it's not showing up, but it's there over here. I can see like it. So it's there, obviously. They say investigators would remain incapable of identifying even more relevant serials if it was in prohibited access. That's how corrupt it is. Given the number of relevant search terms that were required to run against this, and the massive amount of documents, given that the SEO team had confirmed the impossibility, Washington provided an analyst to assist in running the requested searches to go find the files that were basically about as deleted as you can get them without deleting them. So then they got DOJ concurrence to go get the unredacted serials containing the search terms. Pursuant to the request, serials were compiled in the weeks that followed, but a vast majority of them were never disseminated to Washington Field Office. Never got them anyways. So
looks like Sheets is almost ready to open here.
Reportedly.
And they got a huge diesel section there, too. It's because, I mean, we're right off the turnpike, so it makes sense.
That the requested serials were not relevant to this assessment. So, who was that? Who? A team official. Who was that? All right, so the FBI is completely corrupt, as you can see. I don't know if it's gotten any better in these last 4 months or so, but probably not. This was now publicly released by Chuck Grassley. We're glad that he did this.
BB Coast.
Because they're just hiding the files. It's a cover-up, actively happening. So you go, why can't you find any of the Epstein files? Or where are all these records? It's crap like this. Not to mention if they're just deleted. But they're all prohibited access, and so they're all just basically in the ether somewhere where nobody can find them. Now, what can we do about this? Should they be prosecuted? Obviously. Can they be prosecuted? Probably not. Boya fan said this. Unfortunately, her testimony was over 5 years ago when she lied to Congress.
Here it is,
so
right
she is outside the statute of
Sheriff Deputy sitting on the side of the road. Hey, Piggy Piggy.
But Nellie,
looks like, are they open?
And the Democratic
Lots of cars. Oh, no, there's no lights on the gas yet, so they must be getting ready. Oh, they're filling the tanks. Getting close.
If not criminally prosecuted for covering up evidence of crimes committed inside our own government. And just think about how disgusting it is. They would try to blame this on Russia, and they made it up to steal the election. Blaming a foreign superpower for rigging our election, colluding with Trump, and that never happened, so that Hillary can win and then wage a war against Russia. It's a 1-2 punch. Win the election, and you get your war with Russia. You set them up trying to rig your election. Sick people, treasonous behavior. Glad that Chuck Grassley got this published. Finally. All right, so good updates there. Speaking of this, talking of Americans, Tulsi Gabbard also now explaining to us what they were doing. The Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, declassified these materials. Take a look at them. But if you were somebody who had any questions about what Joe Biden was doing to your country, you may have been labeled a domestic violent extremist. They were harmful and dangerous, and all sorts of other things. There are misinformation that turned out to be true. But now we get the documents that were behind that onslaught, and the question is, will anybody be held accountable for it?
Of course not.
So here is what Tulsi Gabbard posted for us. It says, look, as the Director of National Intelligence, I promised to root out and expose the politicization of intelligence. So I recently declassified 2 reports to show how
Patrick Henry.
labeled Americans who disagree with their policies as domestic violent extremists. DVEs, homegrown DVEs, racially motivated DVEs.
That's who's in the thumbnail.
So saying it was followed by FBI investigations, surveillance, and government-directed social media censorship on all of us. This is the classic ploy to politicize intelligence and the national security state against the American people, undermining our constitutionally guaranteed rights and freedoms. And so this is what Joe Biden was saying. Look at this. December 13th, 2021, right in the throes of the post-insurrection January 6th, right in the throes of the COVID pandemic. And here's what they're talking about here. Authored by NCTC, Homeland, and the FBI, coordinated with Redacted. Why can't they tell us who they coordinated with? It's the NCTC current. It says, all of these Democrat weaponized entities, FBI, Homeland, we assess that there are some DVEs, domestic violent extremists, and their foreign analogs will threaten violence in opposition to COVID-19.
Most people would know.
When they were going to say, it's going to be a winter of misery and death if you don't take this pharmaceutical.
The sheriff deputy's right behind me now, right on my ass.
Killing grandma, remember that? In 2020, DVEs threatened or plotted violence against the healthcare sector. It's funny now because their side shooting CEOs in the back. Since the advent of the jabs, DVEs have expanded their potential target set to include government officials, healthcare workers, or others who are working on the vaccination efforts. We anticipate the threat will continue at least into the winter, as many of the new mandates are now being imposed across the country. Remember these sick freaks? In the United States, we've observed that at least a handful of identified anti-government or anti-authority violent extremists.
Yeah, he's following me.
We were making so much fun of them because they had all the different letters in their extremist names. Remember, it's like LGBTQ plus I, expialidocious. It's like they can't help themselves. They have DVEs, then they have anti-authority violent extremists.
He had to have fucking raced up to catch me too because he was on the side of the road there and then
militia violent extremists,
gunned it.
MVEs, and then the RMVEs for the racially. It's like totally nuts. Since August, some of these MVEs have called for violence against medical whatever, and they employ, oh wow, some DVEs employ a number of techniques, let's say, some of which may be criminal, whereas others just may constitute the exercise of rights protected by the Constitution. Yeah, I forgot about that. It says, U.S. persons linking, citing, quoting, or voicing the same narratives raised by these DVEs are likely engaging in First Amendment protected activities, unless they're acting in concert with the threat actor. Furthermore, yeah, right, I mean, we were being censored. We didn't say anything violent. We never saying anything about anything violent ever, anywhere. I've always disavowed that uniformly, even much to our chagrin, like, okay, maybe, you know, but it's still, it's just the good blanket rule. We still got censored. We got canceled. And we were on the light end of the abuse of a tyrannical government. Right? Not like, oh, what was us here? There are other people who got thrown in solitary confinement, posting memes and stuff like that. Like these insane times we were living through. And some of it was First Amendment protected activity. Like posting memes, perhaps that could have been one. But they didn't. They targeted these people. They went after the J6ers. They
just got going so slow.
People showing up at school boards, terroristic parents and stuff like that. And this was just the outgrowth.
Oh, it's a black guy. He's worried about this sheriff deputy. Oh, no signal.
Your advocacy of political or social positions, yeah, right. Political activism, use of strong rhetoric, generalized philosophic embrace of violent tactics.
Yeah, this cop's definitely following me.
Violent extremism and or constitutional protection. Yeah, right. Thank you for that little footnote. We know how this happened in practice. And if they couldn't arrest you for it and investigate you under this memo, well, then they just demonetized you, or they threw you off the internet, or they went after your law license. If you're a medical doctor talking about this, they would try to cancel your medical licenses so that you were just now totally defeated unless you succumb to their will. Diverse socio-political
he's getting off
factors
here.
that are amplifying this threat. All right, let's see here. An overlapping set of social-political grievances.
The county jail's right there. He got off right there.
Could be
I was just being paranoid.
Here's things that you might be mad about. Anger at responses to the pandemic, which was the worst response in the world. I think it's now pretty conclusive. I think our CDC is saying that now. It was like the worst in the world. Our health expectancies went down.
I'm sure he loves doing that to people.
Anyone else. And it was a disaster. Thank you, government. They promised us they had everything figured out. They did because they're morons. Adherents of several DVE ideologies continued coverage around anger at immigration. They also convened us with 15 million people, at least, during those 4 years. And perceived election fraud, which was actually fraudulent, as we talked about ad nauseum here. Evolving conspiracy theories, which were also...
There's going to be no place to park when I get here, though, I guarantee you. During the day now at this facility, it's fucking loud as full.
These are motivated by perceptions and fraud, like we're seeing a lot of that. Saying the New York-based militia violent extremist groups were also arrested. Obviously, the Capitol siege is in there, so-called. Key disruptions. Somebody put a bomb at the Democratic Party, some other Texas group, whatever. And so this was their pretext to come after every single person who contested the government's lies. Tulsi Gabbard was talking about this.
Yeah, me too.
Cocaine, is what she said.
Still, I'm right around needing like 60 more hours watch time right before the end of the month, so I'm going to do poker and the scanning again tonight.
In the FBI during this period of time, and it pointed out exactly that fact that this
I'm going to get it up. I got to grind.
Created here that places a level of suspicion on people.
Doing the poker before last night wasn't very fruitful because I didn't do the poker beforehand. Bring everybody from YouTube.
Should be seen with some form of suspicion as a potential domestic.
Yeah, I'll keep grinding.
Threat. You've talked a lot about. You spoke with Senator Rand Paul about the quiet sky.
I don't know yet. I'm trying to figure that out. I asked their support about it. They wouldn't tell me. I don't think it is. I think you can actually leave it open on some of the older videos.
Many different examples here that go to exactly what you're talking about, that by laying this, giving excuse and license to the FBI and other federal agencies to then surveil or carefully watch Americans to oppose the Biden administration's policies.
Office of the Director of National Intelligence. It's not like she stole that position. Everybody went to the polls and voted. We saw what they were doing, and they were in charge, and we were disgusted by it. Also on the other side, and the election was horrible. So now she can come in and correct the record. And so all the faults of the American system, I'd say at least there is that possibility, right? That these maniacs can be in charge. They can exercise every single level of power to try to stop the
intermittent interaction on the live chat, I think, helps too.
Now, Bongino said that we're also talking about a new COVID strain. Oh no! It says, as we read and process reports of a new COVID strain emerging, says Dan, I want you to know we're actively investigating multiple field offices for cover-up of the origin of the COVID virus, along with associated matters requiring our attention. You deserve answers. Yes. Thank you for that, Dave. All right, so we got that coming up. And then we also had Comer saying, while all this was happening, while we were being attacked by the Biden administration, in truth, Biden didn't know what the heck was going on. And
5 minutes.
The four staffers aren't well-known staffers. These four staffers operated behind the scenes. We're starting with them, Sean.
Tell you what, I wish we had a biscuit world around here, Jody.
Responsible for using the auto pen. Someone got documents and manually placed them in the machine and pressed the power button to sign Joe Biden's signature. That was not Joe Biden. That was done by staffers. That would be done by any staffer. So we believe and have good reason to believe these are the four staffers that were responsible for that. We want to ask them who gave you the authority to use Joe Biden's signature, and we'll go from there. Obviously, we believe that some of the names, like the chief of staff and perhaps the first lady, were involved in a lot of the decision making. If that's where the trail leads, then we'll bring them in as well. But we're going to get answers to all the questions that every American deserves answers to. But again, we're going to see where the trail leads. We followed the money. We found the shell companies. We found the bank accounts. We're going to do the same thing with this audit pen. Who was giving the authority for use of the audit pen? Remember, Sean, there was more activity in the last 100 days of the Biden administration than the first 3.5 years of the Biden administration. Many of the far-reaching executive orders were signed during the last 100 days, and they were all signed by the auto pen. We don't believe that you can sign a legal document with an auto pen. If I issue a subpoena, I have to fly to Washington, D.C. to manually sign my signature on that subpoena. Anything pertaining to the law has to be signed by a person. We know the auto pen was used. What I can tell you tonight is the four staffers that we've asked to come in for transcribed interviews, they have all lawyered up. They are taking this very seriously, and this is going to be a battle to get to the truth. Well, I hope they stay on it. We've got some power now. Get those subpoenas out. On just like they did tomorrow, just like they did Bannon. And as we recall, congressional subpoenas, even are valid, and they have to be honored.
Thanks, Dio.
So we're looking forward to seeing what comes from that. Thank you to James Cook. All right, we got that story, and now we've got this story from It's Rubio. And yeah, this is going to be interesting. Visas revoked for the Chinese students in America. Marco Rubio posted this on X, saying the U.S. will begin revoking visas of Chinese students, including those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party or studying in critical fields. And that's a lot of students. It's like almost 300,000 of them. CNN gave us an update. Estimates about 275,000 from China. We're back in 2023 and 24. That's a lot of people. Almost one half of Wyoming. According to a report from the IIE and the State Department, it sent the second most students from abroad from any country, trailing only behind India, right? And the elites love to send their kids to our schools, including Xi Jinping's daughter, called Xi Mingza. She went to Harvard, and that was some time ago. She enrolled in Harvard in the United States in 2010. After a year, she enrolled under a pseudonym. They come over under pseudonyms. You never know who they are. They maintain low profiles. She graduated from Harvard University with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, and then went back to Beijing. And so this happens a lot. And I was trying to find out if there were any other high-profile people, like the daughter of the prime minister there. And it's hard to find. There's really not much detail.
Fucking parking lot's packed again.
Secret, but it's a lot of people there. Now, the policy is very simple.
Why is that area coned off?
Under President Trump's leadership, the United States will work with the Department of Homeland
This guy's coming out the
to aggressively revoke visas for Chinese students, including those with connections to the Chinese Party or studying in critical fields. We will also revise visa criteria to enhance scrutiny of all future visa applications from the People's Republic of China. And
hey, you.
There's a lot of people who say this is going to be a big, big shift.
Good, you.
The Chinese elite, this is their exit plan. This is their future plan.
kids are not going to be able to come over here. They're going to put pressure back there in China to do something. We'll see what happens. But he said the move is going to send ripples of anxiety across university campuses.
Hey, Toe.
China is the country of origin for the second largest group of students. Many universities rely on
Yep. Give me liberty or make me deaf.
paying full tuition for their revenue.
All right, guys.
Has also benefited over many decades by
We'll crank it back on the way home.
China's
Probably, we'll see. If not, for sure tonight.
Although Rubio's written statement did not define the critical fields, in recent years, there's a lot. No evidence. They say, well, there's no evidence the Chinese are doing this. Okay.
All right.
It is unclear how quickly the
Hey,
State
Toe.
Department and Homeland will cancel the visas and revoke these things.
Get with me, man.
Until now,
See if we make some time to do some rolling.
Party officials
All right, guys. Later.
many top party officials did send their kids